everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Set Gaming's Guides to Albion Online. In the first couple of episodes, we talked about your initial steps in the game world and what is required of you to start progressing your character. And in episode 2, we briefly looked at the auction house, the player banks, and a couple of other features that are central tenets or concepts of the game itself. Today, in this episode, we're going to be looking at the Destiny board, which is basically your character progression and achievements map. Now, we've had a look at this very briefly in other episodes, kind of opening up, closing it, and having a look at a couple of our things that we've achieved with our new character. But in this episode, I want to go into a lot more detail as to what the Destiny board is, how you should be using it, and how you can plan your character. So let's get on with it. In the first part, you'll see we have a line here down the middle, which is basically your adventuring path. So you remember in episode 1, we started all the way down here and leveled our way up by completing various missions and ended up with this central part here. Now, if we go up further, you can see that there's quite a few other levels or tiers to unlock as well. Now, the adventuring path is a bit different to every other aspect of the Destiny board, because all the fame that you are able to collect through your adventures, either whether you're fighting or gathering resources or crafting materials and items, goes towards the progress of these various levels. So if you look here down the bottom under requirements, we have 0 of 9,000 fame that has been met for this particular level. And we can do that by doing anything. So we can go out and mine some ore, or we can, fight some enemies. We can complete the missions that are on the various map tiles around the world, or we can also craft items if we wanted to do it that way as well. And this continues. So once we've unlocked that level, it goes up to the next one, the next one, and the next one. And each of these tiers in the adventuring path basically unlocks the accessories and things that we can use on our character, such as the bag, the cape that our character can wear, and also the various mounts that we can use. With the first one being the tier 3 mount, which is your journeyman riding horse and the journeyman's transport ox. So that's quite simple and straightforward. There's nothing to it. You don't need to spec into it to unlock these paths. It just happens automatically as you're gaming through the world. And every so often, it'll unlock and you'll be able to upgrade your mounts or your bags or whatever. So let's start here by going counterclockwise and looking at the fighting area, which is this big brown section over on this particular side. You'll see that while we're here on this particular path, this is where our character is at in terms of progress. It has also unlocked these parts here. So if I click this icon, which is the trainee fighter unlock, it's the path that you can see here on the Destiny board means that we're currently working towards this particular level. So we'll need 250 fame to unlock this particular level, or mastery level 1. And when we do that, the novice weapons that we can use will then be unlocked. So then we can use a bow, we can use the different types of robes, we can use heavy armor, medium armor, all that sort of thing, shields, tomes, and whatnot. And you'll also see here that this is kind of the tier 2 equivalent of our items. All the items here in their little tier corner have the Roman numeral 2 there. So once we get to this point, we then unlock quite a bit more. So we would then unlock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options or play styles for us to go through. In fact, that's not actually true. There's actually about 3 here. So our characters will always be wearing some sort of armor and some sort of weapons. So you can see down here, this is the heavy plate armor. You've got the melee weapons, which at this point I think is just the shield. Yep. So in order to unlock this one, we would need the novice's broadsword. Moving up, you've got leather armor. Here you've got bows. You've got light armor, and then you've got staves. So depending on what we want to do and the kind of character we want to create, we could focus on each one of these branches by using one of these particular items. So if we wanted to be a hunter, we'd use the novice's bow. If we want to be a caster, we'd start using light armor and possibly, like a fire staff or something, a tome of spells. If we wanted to be a heavy fighter, we would start equipping the plate armor that we can utilize, and we would use a broadsword at this particular point. So once we've completed that and we've started unlocking some of these ones, let's say for example we start working towards the journeyman hunter skill. In order to get to this point, we would need to gather 28,800 fame through experience, through doing missions and fighting various enemies. Once we've done that, it then unlocks another tier of items for us to use, which would be the tier 3 item set. So if we click that question mark and have a look, you can see here that once we get to this point, there are 4 more items that we can now use. One of them is the Journeyman's Bow, the Journeyman's Nature Staff, the Journeyman's Spear, and of course the Journeyman's Torch. Now, depending on what you would want to go from that point on, you would then use the appropriate item. So if we close that one, and go up here, you would then be working towards the tier 4 item set. So if we wanted to continue using the bow, the Journeyman's Bow, we open up this path here, we would then start working towards this particular mastery. So you can see here under requirements, we have the first requirement there is to kill creatures using a Journeyman's Bow, and then once we kind of max out that particular level, it would unlock the Adept's Bow for us to use, which is the tier 4 item. Now if we go to tier 4, which is actually this point here, you will see that once we've completed that particular mastery level, you'll see here, and I mentioned this very briefly in a previous episode, the Destiny board has, I guess, kind of 2 axes that you work along. One is the horizontal axis, or kind of east to west, north-south on the board itself. But then if you look at these various other areas, you also have this mastery level here, which is 1 to 10. And this can be a little bit confusing. So when we first get to this point, once we've cleared mastery level 1, we can start to use tier 4 weapons. And if we continue to use bows, we start to unlock this one, which allows us to use tier 5 weapons. So the Expert's Bow is a tier 5 weapon, indicated here by the Roman numeral V in the top left corner. And we continue to do that at mastery level 3. We can then use our Master's Bow, which is tier 6 or an undead bow. And then you move into mastery level 4, etc., etc. So that would be, tier 7. Now, what's something you may see players talking about in the game is tier points. So tier 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and up. Now, what they're actually referring to in that respect is actually moving along this tree. So if we continue moving along the bow path here and move up to this one here, this one would be the Warbow Fighter unlock. This allows us to use an Adept's Warbow. Now the Adept's Warbow is also tier 4, but it's a slightly different tier point. So many players refer to this as tier 4.2. And what makes it 4.2 exactly? Well, if you look at the icon here, we've got tier 4 in the top left corner, but we've also got these 2 points just along here. So it's tier 4.2. Now the question is, why would you want to move along this side instead of mastering the other levels in tier 4, which we talked about back here? Mastery level 1, mastery level 2, mastery level 3, and going up that way. So because this is going up in the tiers, right? It's going up to tier 7. Well, it's not quite that clear and not quite that well understood as to whether you would go one way or the other. But the indication appears to be that the higher you go up this way and then mastering these ones, this appears to be slightly better in terms of overall damage output once you get to the very top. Until that point, however, mastering these levels as well is almost as good. It's very, very close in terms of the overall damage that you can do. And you'll find it kind of sways either one way or the other as being a better alternative. The important point to note here is that it takes a long time to level all of these mastery levels. So you really should have a decent idea or understanding of what it is you want to achieve and the weapons that you would like to focus on when you're playing the game. So if you like the idea of using a Warbow, a Adept's Warbow, and moving up through that tier, through that mastery level, so if we go to mastery level 2, we can use an Expert's Warbow, which if you remember would be tier 5, or in this case tier 5.2, because it's specialization along the bow path. If we go up to mastery level 5, we can start using an Elder's Warbow, which is basically tier 8.2, and we can also use an Expert's Enchanted Warbow, which is tier 5.5. Now this is where things start to get really, really interesting. So if we have a look at the Expert's Enchanted Warbow and have a look at the physical damage and item power, you'll see that we have an item power of 1083 and a physical damage of 75. If we open up the Elder's Warbow, we have a physical damage of 75, but an item power of 1078. So it's slightly different. Now, item power isn't exactly clear how it gets used in the game, but we have seen it explained by the game devs as a kind of like an internal counter as to how it affects spells on the item itself. So it's safe for us to assume at this point that the item power of 1083 has a slightly higher effect on the spells that you would use on that particular item. So if you open up the spells here and have a look at these spells, the item power would affect the overall damage and stuff that these spells utilize. So this is quite interesting, and of course we can also go up even further. So if we want to continue focusing along the bow path, we can go all the way up to here, and we start using a longbow, and then going up through here. So this would be at the very low level, tier 4.3. If you have a look here, we have a look, it's tier 4 up the top left corner, and you have 3 dots here. And you can also use a tier 4 longbow. And of course, you can continue to start using longbows and work up through the mastery levels, go to Expert's longbow, go to the Master's longbow, and then go to the Grandmaster's longbow, and continue to along that path. Now, the only thing that's really different, other than a slight damage difference between the items at the different tiers, is generally the spells that they have available to them. So even though you'd still be playing a ranged character, the difference between a longbow, a warbow, and just a normal bow is the fact that they have slightly different spells. They all have pretty much common fundamentals in terms of their playstyle and the way that you would play them, but have slightly different specializations depending on what you want to do. Now, this doesn't just apply to bows, it applies to all your different weapons, and it also applies to armor as well. So if we're going to be doing an archetype character, perhaps we'll be focusing on the leather armor tree, which is this. So while you're leveling your bow, you'll also be leveling your leather armor specialization as well. So we can move along here. If we've used the leather armor, you've got your different leather armor pieces, such as your boots, chest, and helm. And once again, this is where we're at this particular point on the Destiny board. Over here, we're now at tier 4. So we continue to, work on that particular tier. We finish that master, we get to tier 5. Master level 3 is tier 6. Master level 4 is tier 7, for example, tier 6, for example, as you can see here at the top left. And again, that continues all the way along. So if we move up to here, this is we're now looking at tier 4.2. Which is medium cloth boots fighter, and then we go all the way up to the top. We've got medium plate boots fighter, which is tier 4.3 and up. So tier 4.3, tier 5.3, tier 6.3, etc. So that's all very cool and very clear, but it does show that there is quite a bit of planning involved in the way you would like to play a character and where you want to take your character. So that's enough for fighting for now. The important thing to note is that this sort of tier system is prevalent throughout the entire game. So you'll see here as we move to other parts of the Destiny board that it applies there as well. If we go down here to our bottom left or southwest, this is our farming area, the yellow line. So farming is something that you generally do on the land that you own or on your player's island, and you set up the various plots of land that you want to use to plant things like seeds and harvest crops and that sort of thing. So set down here, if you want to be a cook, you can do that. Obviously, you need the materials to create the various recipes. If we open up the chicken omelette here on the question mark, here, if you craft the carrot soup, you can then create a chicken omelette. If we click the chicken omelette, you can see the various materials that are required to make that. So raw chicken, sheaf of wheat, and the hen eggs. And all of that needs to be provided either by yourself or by other players. You can't buy that from vendors. And again, it's a similar kind of thing. So if we wanted to focus on cooking, the cooking path, we could move up here to, for example, and start specializing as a pie chef later down the track. So moving along now, we're now moving into the crafting trees, which is the biggest on the board just because there is quite a bit of depth there. But first of all, this blue path here is your resource gathering. So on this new character that I've created, I haven't really gathered any tier 2 resources yet, but that's things like your birch logs and copper ore and different kinds of stones. But as I would collect and gather those resources, the fame that I receive from doing those activities would be contributed to here, just like everything else. And eventually we'd want to start specializing. So if I go into fiber harvester, which is things like harvesting cotton, flax, and other cloth-based plants, including hemp, you would then start to move up through these masteries. So at this particular level, we need to use, I think, a novice sickle. Once we've completed that, we can then use a journeyman sickle. We move up, then we can use an adept sickle, and then we move up further, we use an expert sickle, and then a master sickle, etc., etc. Now, the important thing to note here is that not all the resources in the game are gatherable right from the start. You actually need to level this up and upgrade your sickle as you go. As you do that and you use higher and higher level sickles, more and more resources become available for you to harvest. And again, that applies right across the board. So if we want to start focusing on ores, or if we want to chop wood, it's the same kind of thing. So we start with the novice pickaxe, we move up to the journeyman's pickaxe, adepts, experts, master, grandmaster, and of course the elder's pickaxe. And that applies for all resource gathering. So last but not least, we're moving over here to the crafting, and you can see here the crafting takes up almost half of the board. It is a huge tree that you will need to study and look into. But generally speaking, you probably want to focus on the things that best complement your character. So on this character, I've decided I'm definitely going to go the hunter route, which means that I'll probably want to either craft bows or craft armor. You can do both. It's just the amount of time required to do both, particularly as you start heading up the higher mastery trees, takes a very long time. You either need to gather the resources yourself or buy it from other players, and then make all those items and level them up. So you can see here that we've already unlocked the first tier here, which basically allows us to create novice equipment, which is tier 2 gear, as we discovered before with the fighting trees. And then as we build up that tier 2 gear, we then can unlock this tier 3 stuff. So if I'm going to be a hunter, I'll start working on bows. And by getting to this point and crafting novice hunter gear, I can then create the journeyman's hunter equipment, which is your tier 3 stuff, right from the bows to the nature, staff, spear, and torch. Now what's really interesting here is you can see that this has a direct correlation with the fighting trees as well. So if I'm a hunter and I'm crafting all of these items here, the medium leather armor, the journeyman's bow, the journeyman's nature staff, etc. If we go back over to the fighting area over here, you'll notice that this is pretty much all of this stuff here. So these are all the weapons that we would want to use, and for leather, this is the leather items that we would want to use. So there's a direct correlation between the items we can craft and the items that we could end up using based on the type of character that we're playing. Now, again, the crafting system is very, very similar to the fighting board. So you remember we mentioned before how you move through the tiers from tier 3 to tier 4 to tier 5 to tier 6, etc. And at tier 4, you start to focus on more of a specialization. So at this point here, we've crafted enough journeyman's bows to start creating adept's bows. And you'll also notice here that we get another bonus here, so that whenever we craft a novice's bow, we get a +5 to the crafting quality. Now, we haven't covered that before. We haven't covered the crafting quality and how that applies to items, but we'll cover that in a future episode. For now, however, we'll just continue focusing on the Destiny board. So once we can craft an adept's bow, we can then start to master our bow crafting skills. So if we wanted to start, moving up towards an expert's bow, you can see here for the level 2 master, we need to craft a journeyman's bow or better. And then once we've completed that, we would get the expert's bow and all of these bonuses in addition. If we move to mastery level 3, you can see here that we'd need to start creating adept's bows, and then that would unlock the ability for us to create a master's bow at the next tier. So you can see it continues and continues just like it does with the fighting. So if we go to mastery level 4, we can start creating the Grandmaster's bow. If we open that up, you'll notice here that it is, in fact, a tier 7 bow that we would be crafting that particular point in time. And just like fighting, if you want to specialize further, remember these are kind of like your whole points, kind of tier 4.1. If we want to move up further, this would be tier 4.2 and then tier 4.3 for this outer rim. If we wanted to move up and start crafting war bows, again, this is a one-to-one correlation with the fighting system from before. We would then start to have to create first the adept's bow to get started, and then we would be able to start focusing on the adept's warbow craftable. So once we completed that, we could then start moving into the mastery of this and work towards an expert's warbow as a craftable item. As you can see here, this is a tier 5.2 item once we craft it. So once you kind of get to this point, it does start to take quite a long time to spend all the points that you need to specialize in the crafting area that you want to. And again, this applies to all areas. So, if you want to craft melee weapons, you can do that over here. If you want to focus more on caster equipment, so staves and spell tomes and that sort of thing, you can do that here. One thing that is interesting is that once you kind of get to this point, there isn't a separate tree for crafting things like leather armor. It's actually part of this tree. So you can see here, once we've got mastery level 1 for the journeyman's hunter equipment, we can move up here and then start focusing on the leather armor. So if we want to start focusing on crafting really good hoods, then we can do that here. So that's everything so far, guys, on the Destiny board. It is quite a complex system, but it's a great system. I really recommend and suggest that you have a really good study of it, because it does take a little bit to get your head around it. But it is a really interesting and unique way of progressing your character. Anyway, guys, that's it for episode 3 of the Set Gaming's Guides for Albion Online. I'm your host, Julifias, and of course, as always, if you've liked the video, please put a like down the bottom or subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos. Okay, thanks. Bye.